Have you ever just stopped and wondered where the massive, massive fortunes in our world really come from? I mean, we are living with levels of wealth inequality that we haven't seen in centuries. And most of the usual explanations point to things like markets or innovation, maybe globalization. But what if the real answer is hiding in plain sight, in something we all take for granted? What if wealth has a secret source code?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to tackle the wealth puzzle itself. Then we'll uncover this secret code of capital. After that, we'll get into the 4 legal superpowers this code grants, find out who the masters who write this code actually are, and finally put it all together to see how capital really rules by law.
So let's just start with the scale of the problem. Trying to square our democratic ideals with the kind of mind-boggling inequality we see today, it's a huge challenge. It almost feels like we're back in a pre-revolutionary era, which really forces you to ask some pretty fundamental questions. And this chart really just lays it out with stark clarity. This is the famous elephant curve. See that steeply rising trunk way over on the right? Yeah, that's the top 1%. From 1980 to 2017, they captured 27% of all new wealth. To put that in perspective, that's more than double the new wealth that the entire bottom half of the world's population got, combined. This is not a small gap we're talking about. It is an absolute chasm.
And that, right there, brings us to the critical point. We hear it all the time, right? Wealth comes from skill, from taking risks, from good old-fashioned hard work. And look, of course those things play a role. But can they, by themselves, explain the sheer scale and the stickiness of the fortunes we see today? Well, the author of our source material, Katharina Pistor, she suggests there's something else going on, a deeper, more fundamental mechanism at play.
And that mechanism is what she calls the code of capital. Now, we're not talking about computer code here. We're talking about a legal code. It's the hidden architecture that systematically and almost invisibly transforms simple, ordinary assets into incredibly powerful wealth-generating machines. And right here, you can see that transformation in action. Over on the left, you've got a simple asset. A piece of land is, well, it's just dirt. An idea is just a thought in your head. But look what happens on the right. By coding that land with property law, suddenly it's collateral, it's a source of credit. By coding that idea with patent law, it becomes a legally protected monopoly. The physical thing hasn't changed at all, but its economic power, it's been magnified beyond belief. So this is it. This is the central formula for this entire idea. Capital is not just a thing. Capital equals an asset plus the legal code. It's a pretty ingenious process when you think about it. You take literally any potential source of value, an object, a claim, an idea, and you cloak it in these specific legal attributes that give its owner a massive advantage in creating more wealth. So what is this legal code actually made of? Well, it's not some single giant law. It's a combination of these core modules, mostly from private law. You should think of these as the building blocks, the functions and subroutines, if you will, that lawyers use to construct wealth-generating capital out of otherwise ordinary things.
So, okay, how does this actually work in the real world? When lawyers mix and match these modules to code an asset, they give it 4 crucial attributes, what you can really think of as legal superpowers, that privilege that asset over pretty much all others.
The first superpower is priority. So imagine a company goes bankrupt. Everybody wants their money back. Employees, suppliers, lenders, who gets paid first? Priority means that if your claim is coded correctly, maybe with collateral law, you get to jump right to the front of the line. Your claim is officially ranked higher than others. That is the real acid test for any legal right.
Second up is durability. Having priority is great, but wealth that just vanishes in the next recession isn't really lasting wealth, is it? So, legal modules like trusts and corporate law, they create these shields around assets. They protect them from the personal creditors of the owner, from lawsuits, from the general chaos of the market. And that allows wealth to survive and grow, not just for years, but for generations.
The third superpower is a big one, universality. A simple contract, right? That's just binding between the people who signed it. But a legally coded capital asset, like a property right, that is binding against the entire world. This is what scales up a private agreement and turns it into a globally recognized right. And crucially, it requires the power of a state to enforce it against total strangers. And finally, maybe the most powerful of them all, convertibility. This is the ultimate escape hatch. It's the ability to transform your privately created financial asset back into state-backed money, the only thing that's truly a safe store of value, especially when a crisis hits. It lets asset holders lock in their gains while everybody else is facing catastrophic losses.
So, who are the wizards behind the curtain here? Who are the ones wielding these incredibly powerful legal tools? Well, it's not who you might think. It's not primarily legislators in parliament or judges banging a gavel. The real work, it happens somewhere else entirely. As Pistor puts it, the true masters are elite private attorneys. They don't just apply the law as it exists. They creatively recombine these legal modules in new and innovative ways, deal by deal. And in doing so, they are effectively making new law. They are the architects of modern capital. And this reveals the really crucial dynamic here. It's a powerful partnership between private creativity and public force. It starts with private asset holders hiring the best lawyers money can buy. Those lawyers then go jurisdiction shopping for the most favorable legal systems, which are usually English or New York law, to code their clients' assets. But the master stroke is that final step, getting the state to agree to put its full coercive power, its police and its courts, behind enforcing that privately created code.
All right, let's bring all this home. We've seen the puzzle of inequality. We've seen the legal code that creates capital, the superpowers it grants, and the lawyers who wield it. So how does this system keep going and shape our entire economy? Well, what this theory does is provide a powerful legal explanation for one of the most famous economic findings of our time, Thomas Piketty's R is greater than G. Why does the return on capital consistently outpace overall economic growth? Pistor's answer is that it's not some natural law of economics. It happens because the code of capital makes certain assets legally superior. They are designed with priority, durability, and convertibility. They are, quite simply, more equal than other assets, like your labor, and so they generate higher and more durable returns. This quote from the legal historian Bernard Rudden just nails it perfectly. The legal tricks that were first invented centuries ago to protect the landed wealth of feudal lords, they never went away. They've just been detached from land and applied to the mobile, intangible global wealth of today, things like stocks, bonds, derivatives, and intellectual property. And that's really the key takeaway. When we hear the word code today, our minds jump to software. But the fundamental operating system of our economy, the code that really determines who gets what and why, is written in the language of law. It's a completely human-made system, built and tweaked and maintained over centuries. Which, of course, leaves us with a final and pretty critical question. If we recognize that capital isn't some force of nature, but a social construct, a product of specific legal choices we've made, that opens up a really powerful possibility. If humans wrote this code, does that mean humans can also edit it, patch it, or maybe even rewrite it for a more equitable and stable future? That's the challenge this whole analysis leaves us with.